All right, we just got the green light. Hopefully everything's working. Oh, and Ross, I didn't ask you. Can you see the comments on the side of
I
people?
can't at this time. Oh, wait a minute.
If you click
No, I
over on the
can't.
side.
No, I can because I
Okay.
clicked over to comments instead of private chat.
Yeah, that's it. I forgot to tell you that before. All right, what's happening, Fish and friends? Welcome to another episode. This is a live. It should be a fun live. We have, of course, down below there, old Randall. Randall, how are you?
I'm actually sunburnt as heck. I thought
Yeah, your
yesterday when
head.
Debo and I went out, it would be a fantastic day to go no hat, a bandana, of course. So this part of my forehead is white, and a sleeveless shirt. I mean, granted, it was like almost 90, but
It
straight
was
up
like
sun.
100 with heat index. We had. It's been the craziest weather. I don't even know where to start. We had like 40s into 50s, and then we broke three or 4 days in a row of highest heat records for since they've been recording or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, Debo, as a dumb rod salesman, you don't have to tell me about the weather. we have. It's just been, I mean, there's been so many people throughout the country just kind of delaying getting out on the water because their spring has been so
Everything's
bad.
been behind.
I mean,
Everything's been behind.
yeah, I mean, I live in Wisconsin, but the Southeast, they had literally 6 weekends in a row that were crap. And you just feel terrible for them because normally they're March and April. They can get out and fish before the pontooners get out and the jet skiers get out and all that. And they haven't been able to do it. And it's just been a really challenging spring, and now all of a sudden, yeah, like you said, it's living up, even up here in Wisconsin. I mean, all of a sudden it was, I think, like almost 78 today. So it's like, okay, no spring. We're just going to go right to summer.
Yeah, we were same thing, but then we jumped like straight to 90 and humid.
Heat index is over 100. It's crazy. But I haven't even got to introduce you yet. To my side over here, I have to remember everything's backwards. We have Mr. Ross from TFO Rods, Temple Fork Outfitters. Ross and I had a chance to talk a little while back. I got my hands on some of their rods, and I had questions because if y'all missed the review I did the review on the Tactical Bass Elite, the black and gray one. And I had some questions about it, and I messaged him on Instagram, and I ended up getting in contact with Ross and then also Jim, one of their head rod design gentlemen. And I got to go through all the stuff with them. So, Ross, I appreciate that. Super cool of you guys to go through that. How about you? What's your story in fishing? How'd you kind of get into TFO? Give us the 30-second elevator speech.
Well, it's not really 30 seconds, probably closer to a minute.
You only get 30 seconds. If you keep
okay,
going,
I think this is my 27th year in the industry. I got really, really, really fortunate in college. A friend of mine I was sharing a class with was working part-time at a little bait shop, and I got into just working, just literally selling minnows and bait and stuff in southern Minnesota. And it was such a blessing because it was so cool to just talk fishing, right? I mean, this is really pre-hardcore internet days, but it's like every day was a chat board. It was so much fun. And that allowed me to get introduced to a lot of reps in the fishing industry. And shortly after college, I kind of got approached about being a rep, and I was too dumb to say no. I was all gung ho and excited, and
Heck yeah.
So that lent itself to me being an independent rep for the better part of about 15 years, and then from there, I had been really fortunate to rep a lot of different lines through my years: fishing rods, reels, baits, a lot of stuff on the hunting side, different things like that. So a lot of diversity. Was a lot of fun. Good way to cut my teeth. And then I was fortunate. I got an opportunity to work for Navionics for a number of years. This was slightly before the Garmin purchase, which has been great for them, that side of it. But Navionics was a lot of fun because they were really independent, meaning they kind of worked with everybody, and you got to really play with a lot of different depth finders and all that. And then out of the blue, I got an opportunity to go to work for Shimano and G. Loomis. And I worked directly for them as a regional sales manager and did that for a number of years. And I got a completely oddball email from a mentor of mine that said, "Hey, you should talk to this guy at TFO." And I remember going, "Yeah, they're, I don't know, they're primarily fly. They've got some conventional. What do I think?" And I started going through the interview process, and right away I realized, oh, this is very, very different than I thought it was. It's such a unique opportunity. And that was in the fall of 2019. And I actually took the job the first week of January. So of 2020, literally 2 months before COVID and the world ended and everything happened. So,
and you're like, oh no, what did I get myself into?
TFO, but it's been such a blessing as far as just the tremendous opportunity to be here, because we're doing a lot of things that I had gravitated to on my personal basis. And our rods really fit me personally. So it totally worked, and everything ended up being just a really great situation. So that was my way longer than 30-second spiel on how I ended up at TFO and all that. But I've been in the industry now, I believe I'm 95% sure this is my 20th iCast this year when I go. And it's like a weird badge of honor because I've been through more pain than I deserve. But the iCast isn't nearly as much fun for the people that, on the outside, they think iCast is awesome, and it's great. But when you're working the booth, it is a week of long days and all that. So
constant pressure. Yeah. And that's kind of a reiteration of what we've heard from a few people in the industry, is there's so many different ways. We heard from Nick, the informative fisherman, last week. We've heard from other people before. There's so many different ways to get into it. Like Ross said, I was going through and putting everybody's comments there. We've got a ton of people already in here. It looks like 155 folks. I think it was David that said manners. Ross started out at a bait shop, selling manners, selling fish and stuff. Not ever think, like, did you in your wildest dream when you started there ever think you would be, a marketing rep for a rod company?
No, not at all. I never, and actually I caught your informative angler piece last week, and it was really interesting when he was talking about it, because I've said to a number of young people through my career, hey, if you want to be in marketing, you can be in marketing for a fishing company. Now there's a social media branch to every company in the fishing industry. Now there's you forget about it, but there's logistics, right? I mean, people don't realize there's warehouse staff members, and I'm not talking about, somebody saying, well, I don't want to load boxes. Well, you can start there, but we have guys in our warehouse that they're doing everything logistically to get the rods to you. So it doesn't have to be sales, and it doesn't have to be anything. There's jobs in the fishing industry that can fit you, and you can be around it and be excited by it. If you're a young person and you are interested in being in the fishing industry, find your niche, and I guarantee you there's a job available for you if you're interested in it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of a reoccurring thing because, for the longest time, I think people thought that, and I think a lot of people still do, you can either be a tournament fisherman, you can work for a fishing company. And I think a lot of people, think you need that I'm not even going to say marketing, because I don't think people necessarily go there, like, the trade shows, that kind of stuff. I'm going to be one of the, I guess it would still be marketing, but like one of the reps, a distributor guy. And then maybe a couple things here and there, you work for like a retail store, something like a Dick's or Shields, and you get your way into like the fishing industry, or the fishing part of the industry. But yeah, there's so many other different ways. But yeah, listen, I want to talk more about TFO. I want to talk about you guys. We could go on and on about the end. We should do that. We should try to get a few different people in different spots, Randy, of the industry, and talk about like the different connections and how that all works together. And
yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that, kind of stood out is, you just got to have that drive. You got to have that want. You got to have that desire. And you also have to, at the exact same time, you have to understand that just because you want it, or, it's something you think is really, really cool, doesn't mean that like it's just going to get there. You're going to maybe have to, scoop some minnows first, or, sort some crawlers or something like that. But do it and do what you want to do, because if you continue to do it and work hard at it, you're going to end up somewhere,
Yeah. It's the only, I don't want to be Debbie Downer on this, but the other thing that I will tell young people.
Well, if you suck, you're not going to get a job.
No, it's not even that. What I try to remind people every once in a while is, a widget's a widget and a spreadsheet's a spreadsheet. Like you still have to respect the fact that there's a lot of days that I don't talk to anybody about anything fun related fishing. Now,
Sure.
I get a lot of fun opportunities like tonight where I get to talk, fishing and fishing rods and that kind of stuff. And that's exciting and a good time. But it is a job, and I think that everybody thinks that for some crazy reason, they think that all we do is go on fishing trips and all that. It's like, no, we don't go on fishing trips near as much as one would think. I mean, I've gotten some opportunities to do some things in my career, but that doesn't mean that it's frequent, because it's not.
Yep. So TFO, kind of talking on that, because you work, 5 days a week, I'm sure 50, 60 hours, you're not just working the bare minimum, fishing the 5th day of the week. Yeah, we only work 4 days a week, fish the 5th. It's, it's such a cake.
I wish.
Yeah. And so kind of into that, how long, we were kind of talking beforehand, how long has TFO been in business, and kind of how did you start? Because I'll kind of tell people my first glimpse of TFO, I think was 2 years ago, when I commented on one of Ben Nowak's Instagram pictures, and I had seen actually Jeremy Francis, I think is his last name, Jeremy, Fishing the Lone Star. Him and Ben Nowak using TFO, and I'd never really heard of him. And Ben posted some pictures and was talking about, and I'll share some pictures here in a second, but we'll look at the website, which I also link below. So if y'all want to check out any of the TFO stuff, I link their website, and then also the link to Tackle Warehouse if you want to check them out. Because Tackle Warehouse, of course, only has the bass stuff. Their actual TFO site has Ross is going to get into that. They started with other things besides the bass rods. So, and that was kind of my thing a couple years ago. I saw Ben post that. So I was like, look like a sweet rod. I want to try one. And then it's kind of, snowballed from there. So how long has TFO been around? Kind of what's your, how's that kind of journey look?
This is our 27th year in business. The company actually started in Utah. It was a group of guides that were trying to import fly materials. They wanted beads, they wanted tippet materials, they wanted stuff that they couldn't easily get. And it quickly became an opportunity for a gentleman by the name of Rick Pope that got involved in it. And Rick is a unique guy. He lives in Texas. And so he brought the company full-time to Texas, but he immediately had started saying to friends, it's really crazy. You shouldn't have to spend $1,000 on a fly rod to have a tremendous experience. We should be able to give people an opportunity to go fishing for a reasonable price. And we should be able to give them that same value. And it really became something that he started searching out. And in so doing, he ended up partnering with an individual in Korea that actually came from Shakespeare and Iowa and a couple other places. But BJ had been creating rods for a number of years, and he and Rick hit it off right away. And they started to manufacture rods together, and they were all fly rods, and they were all fly-driven rods. And shortly after they began to make fly rods, Rick Pope had a personal friendship with Lefty Cray. Now, in the fly world, Lefty Cray he is the godfather in the United States of fly fishing. He and, Flip Pallet are really the two iconic, voices and names and faces of our industry from the fly side. But Lefty really allowed us to have a lot of credibility and just helped us with all of our rod designs. And really what Lefty's goal was, his goal was to create rods that were easy for customers to cast and easy to work with. And that's why when you look at our tagline of Fish the Original, by no means, let me get this out of the way, by no means is TFO saying we're the original rod company. But what
do you guys get that a lot? Do you guys get questions on that?
Well, when we first did it, people were like, the original rod, and it's like, no, hold on. We're not saying that. What we're saying is we're the original rod company to say that, kind of my terms here. This is crazy. You don't need that kind of, you don't need to spend that kind of get what to get that kind of performance. So Lefty allowed us to do that. And so we were in business for the better part of 15 years. I think it was probably about 17 years total that we were in business, and they decided to
Wow.
get into the conventional world. At the time, they actually were able to use Gary Loomis as an advisor to them. And Loomis, it was kind of a misunderstanding at the time to the consumers. Gary didn't have anything to do with our ownership, or it didn't have anything to do with our brand directly, but we paid him as a consultant on it. So the cool part about that was we literally, on the fly side, we had Lefty Cray, and on the conventional side, we had Gary Loomis. I mean, so we've got some really rich DNA built into our rods. But the one overriding thing that holds through to us in our DNA is just the general idea of, we're going to give you a really great tool for a sound price. Okay. We're not the brand that's going to give you the most extreme technologically advanced item for $650. That's not who TFO is. And that's not who there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. Go do that if that's what you're interested in. We really want to build, the right tool for a sound price. It's part of our tagline. It's corny for me to say it that way, but that's really what our goal is. And it fits into every rod series that we do. We're constantly trying to
build. I was just going to bring up the show.
Yeah. We're trying to constantly build the next rod that is just a value packed rod for the price point that we're in. So it's been that's why it fit so well for me personally. Also, it's just, I couldn't get over, how at times I just kind of felt like, hey, this $500 rod I'm feeling is great, but it wouldn't be something I'd buy. I would buy something over here that might be $150, $200. So it just fit me on a personal level, and
I'm gonna mute Randall. I don't know what he's down there doing. Opening up clamshells or something. There we go. Can you hear us now, Randy? Whoop! And he got pissed off and left. It's typical Randy. He'll be back.
Okay.
He's like the girlfriend that leaves then just keeps coming back. We still love Randy. But what I was gonna say was, even the most expensive rod that you guys have. This was the one that I first got my hands on that I was talking to y'all about earlier. Ben Nowak had posted some pictures. And if you don't follow Ben, go check out Ben. He's a smallmouth frickin' slayer. But he's been using these for some time. And the rod is awesome. I did a review on it. I should go link that. I'll link that below. Uh-oh. Stubby's upstairs. He sees a rabbit. Apparently, I can hear him. I apologize. But this is the most expensive rod that you guys have right now, and I don't know if that's going to change. Like you said, you're still pretty new into the some of the conventional stuff, relatively speaking. 8 years or whatever. But great rod, and actually the one that I've been having some of the most, I shouldn't say the most luck. I think I've only caught one fish on it. But the one that I am actually enjoying the most is one of your professionals. Let's kind of start here. Let's start here and go into some of the rod questions. So for everybody watching, if you've got questions about TFO, and if you don't know a ton about them, there's Randy. The sunburn go to your head, bro?
No, you forgot to remind me to turn the Wi-Fi off before we started.
Oh, you were fine. Everything was good. You should have stayed on your Walmart Wi-Fi. So, Ross, if you didn't know the joke behind this, you might see people talking about it. Randy lives next to Walmart and steals their Wi-Fi, so it's okay. Like I said, we still love them. But let's start with the professional series, and this is kind of a newer series, right? I don't remember seeing this one when I first got the Elite.
It is and it isn't. Okay, so we just revamped this rod last ICAST. We had this line in our lineup for, I think, the better part of 5 or 6 years. The unique thing about the professional series is this is the funny part about the industry. I'm going to say something that's really controversial.
Uh-oh.
We sell a lot of these to multi.
Don't get me banned on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, multi-species is like the kiss of death in the fishing industry. You're never allowed to fish bass with a walleye rod. You're never allowed to use a saltwater rod for anything but salt. And it's just, we pigeonhole everything. But the professional series is just a great multi-purpose rod with moderate fast actions across the board. And that's something that hopefully we kind of dive into a little bit tonight, but moderate fast is not a dirty word. Okay. It's not a dirty phrase.
Not at
It's,
all. No, we can.
yeah.
I'll stand on that hill with you all day.
Oh, it drives me crazy. And this has been the better part of 10 years on a personal journey, but also as a salesman. It was like in the industry, I kept noticing that people were complaining about losing fish, or like they were opening up hooks. And it almost always comes back to you're using a rod that's too fast, or, or too much power in the rod. And that's why I'm always like, guys, moderate fast is a great thing for landing fish. Okay. And if you do appreciate using braid or fluorocarbon, you have almost no stretch in your line. So moderate fast is your friend. Stop. I'm not saying it doesn't have a place, but there's less and less place for extra fast anymore. We do not manufacture a rod in our conventional lineup that is extra fast. I wish Jim was here, because maybe I'm going to say that wrong. Maybe there's one or two, but on the bass side of things, there is not a single rod we manufacture that's extra fast. And it has everything to do with the fact there's no stretch in our lines in current, usage, and something has to give. And the professional series is just an awesome way to get somebody into a great rod with a ridiculous value. It's got Fuji guides on it. It looks sharp, all like, nice stuff, right? But more importantly, it backs it up with the right actions and all of that. And it has everything to do with the blank. And, this isn't TFO related. It is in the sense of this is how we do it. But when the consumers are out there and you're looking at a rod, please understand that the blank is the engine. Okay. You wouldn't go buy a new pickup without asking what engine was in the truck, right? We got a bunch of bass fishermen tonight, and a lot of us, run full-size pickups, right? But the engine is everything, and the blank is everything. The componentry is leather bucket seats and, where your cup holder's at versus cloth and no cup holder, componentry changes all that. But at the end of the day, you tend to like your vehicle based on the engine. And the professional series has just a awesome set of blanks. It fits so many different species and so many different things a guy can do. For $99 is where they start. They go up to $119 on the high end, but man, they're just an awesome option for consumers that want to try a TFO, but also want to do a lot of different things with the same rod.
Yeah, and I didn't realize every single rod in this line was a moderate fast. And kind of like you and I have talked before. We talked about this back when I picked up a couple other rods about the hook. I used to have a series called the hook rod line relationship. And you and I talked about, I get so many questions from people. I love trying to help people, but it's such a wide question of, hey, Debo, will you help me? What's the best Texas rod I should get? Texas rig rod I should get? Or, I fish spinner baits all the time. What's the best rod ever for spinner baits? And, then I kind of go down the questions, what's your budget? How heavy do you normally throw? What are you fishing around? And even when you get into a Texas rig, even more questions, how big of a hook? How do you ever go over 3/8 of an ounce weight? It's kind of an open question. So a moderate fast, I'm not, and I think as long as people know that up front, I'm not ever afraid to use a moderate fast rod. And it seems like the industry, the generic rod that you're always going to find is like a 7'2" fast action rod, medium heavy. That's like the blanket that you find everywhere. And I think people get so used to that, and like you and I were talking about before, people will oftentimes have a bad experience with either a rod or a lure based on the system as a whole, right? If I'm using an extra fast rod with braid and I'm losing fish all the time, there's zero give in that system, right? There's no way for that fish to keep it pinned. You give it a little bit of of slack line, that fish is gone. So
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that. That was just kind of a spill my guts. And then I just ran out of gas. Alan, I will say real quick, we have to give Mr. Randall a huge thanks. So the whiteboard that I said I was going to get for a long time, Randy knows me. I tend to procrastinate sometimes because I'm so busy with stuff. Randall, we thank you, brother, and love you. Randy actually went and picked me up a whiteboard and said, "Here, nerd. All you have to do is put it up." So I did. So we have a parking lot. So Ross, in case we have to get into anything, I'll put questions up here in the parking lot so I don't forget them, because I got hit in the head a lot when I was younger and I forget things. So
there's nothing wrong with that. I totally understand. And I will go back real quick. I'll go back to the
absolutely,
the discussion about the line and the rod and the bait. Okay. And I can tell you that the personal kind of journey I went through with chatterbaits is the epitome of this entire conversation. When the chatterbait first came out in Florida, it exploded, right? Everybody had it, right? You had to have a chatterbait. And this would have been like maybe 2008, 2005. I don't know that time. And I remember hating them at the beginning because I could get all sorts of bites, but I could never get the fish in the boat. And I now realize, through a journey and a process, that it was 100% based upon, I was probably fishing, I know I was fishing something that was an extra fast rod. I was pulling the bait out of their mouth. I wasn't allowing them to eat it correctly. Everything that went into that. And it had everything to do with, I bought what they told me to buy. And it was horrible for me. It was awful. And then I discovered about 6 or 7 years ago, I discovered composite rods for throwing a chatterbait. And I started to fall in love with chatterbaits and realized they're so easy to hook up, to hold on to the fish and keep them buttoned and all of that. But this is a perfect example of TFO. When I got to TFO, one of the first projects that Jim Shulin and I worked together on were these glass rods. And they had always, before I got there, they had planned on making some glass rods that really fit the crankbait guys, right? I mean, the more traditional, slightly softer, almost fiberglass more feel. And what
a lot of us were used to back in the day, like that's all they had for, all of the crank stuff was glass, 6/6 glass, right?
Yep. Well, that's what David Fritz told us to throw in the late 90s, right? We all had a fiberglass rod that weighed about 9 pounds is what it felt like. And that's not David's fault. That was the
it felt like holding a pool cue. Yeah.
And there again, like how is a dumb fisherman like me supposed to argue with David Fritz, right? Like, so I bought what he told me to buy, but fast forward now to TFO and this glass rod. My experience with the composite rods were I literally remember asking Jim, I don't even know if I was on the job for 2 or 3 weeks. Hey, why are composite rods always so expensive? Like the evergreen rod that Brett Height makes and, all those great actions, those perfect actions. I was like, oh, why can't we make one? And Jim kind of chuckled and said, it's actually cheaper to make that rod than it is a full carbon fiber rod. So I don't know why. So we immediately launched into it. And the 7.4 was absolutely driven. I was just pounding my fists on a table going, we got to have a more chatterbait driven rod. And it was everything to do with the journey I went through just as a fisherman. Right. And, but you're talking about it is so vital. If consumers or just guys listening to this leave with nothing else, I cannot tell you how incredibly vital it is to understand the line and the rod and the reel and the bait all play a massive factor in what and how this hookup game works. And as I constantly tell friends of mine, buddies of mine will just be, BSing a little bit. And I'll say, well, who cares if you hooked the fish? It doesn't count if it doesn't get in the boat, or it doesn't get in the shore, right? I mean, if you're bank fishing, who cares if you hook 12 fish? You're going to drive home beating the steering wheel to death if you lost 12 fish.
Randy still counts those. We still quarrel about that, but
Debo, shut your mouth.
No,
let's be honest, Debo. What happens is Debo hooks up with a fish. He gets it up onto land. He takes it off of the hook, and then it flops out of his hand somehow. Or it doesn't even make it out of the water, and it flops off the hook. And he's like, well, that's number 17. It's like, Debo, you've touched one fish today. How is that number 17?
Okay. Hey, I practice safe catch and release, Randy. That's all I'm doing.
Randy, I need some clarification. This is a little bit like the boat. Did the fish like literally cross to land?
Did it pass the gunnel?
Still in the water.
Did it pass the bank fishing gunnel?
Don't you have to put hands on the fish to begin with?
I don't believe you have to put hands on the fish, but I believe that the fish must get to land. Just
on
like
terra firma, 100%.
Okay, it's just like
and
the gunnels of my boat. If the fish swings in and then goes to the other side and falls off, that's still a fish because it was inside.
I count it. Yeah. I practice safe catch and release.
Debo catches hundreds of fish every time we go out there.
Now, granted, none of them are over a pound, but that's a whole
I
story.
usually keep a counter of every single time this guy tries to unhook a fish and it falls on the ground. Like I can almost feel, I get this sixth sense, like I'm in The Shining, that something hits me and I'm like, you're gonna drop that one. Next thing I know, it's on the ground.
I don't know if I get them hooked weird or what. Yeah, I have a tendency to drop fish, and I don't try to. It happens. I don't know. I don't know. Okay, let's get a couple questions. I have not got to engage with our fishing friends over here. Thank you all. We've got 215 people watching. I appreciate y'all. Share, like, comment, subscribe, all those fun things. I don't have to tell you. Y'all know how YouTube works. Fish in the Southeast. Oh, what do you got, Randall?
No, I was gonna say I've been like kind of watching, and I've seen some, so we can get to those. But if you have a couple, I know this one's.
I'm going to start running down the list. This is from Mr. Fish in the Southeast. Good cat. He was on a live a while back. He said, "What's a good square bill crank rod you guys make with good sensitivity?"
Okay, the first thing that I'll say is our 7.2 glass rod. Our composite. It's a composite rod. We call it a glass rod, but it's a composite rod. And it's 60% carbon fiber and 40% fiberglass. So it gives you that action of a fiberglass rod without dulling some of the sensitivity you get from carbon fiber. Now, traditionally speaking, you don't want fabulous feel on a crankbait. Just like a chatterbait, you don't want that tremendous feeling in a crankbait. You want that slight delayed response to the feel. So I really feel like the 7.2 medium is a great place to start. The 7.4 medium heavy, if you're going to throw like those bigger 2.5s, like KVD's big one. I mean, he's got like 3 sizes. If you're throwing the 2 smaller sizes, the 7.2 is great for it. If you're going to get into that really big stuff, I personally don't throw a lot of that. And the 7.4, the big thing to decide on the rod length has everything to do with the cover you're trying to cast it to. If you're primarily bank fishing or you're fishing a more open water scenario, the 7.4 will shine a little bit better because it's longer. But if you're all targeting in an area, the 7.2 is easier to cast because it's shorter, right? We messed around when we built the glass series with a 7-footer, but it just didn't give that the guides and the pro staff and nobody really loved it. I have a prototype in my boat, and every time I pick it up, I go, I'm glad we didn't make this rod because it just doesn't work. But the 7.2 medium is what I would tell you on square bills. 9 out of 10 days, that's my setup. That's what most of our pro staff setup is. We do have some guys that will throw on the full carbon fiber rods, and they would lean towards a 734 in the tactical or the tactical elite line, the 734 casting rod. The only thing there is I really recommend you go to like almost a mono or something that's got a little bit more stretch and a little less sensitivity. And that's why it's like 9 out of 10 days, 9 out of 10 guys, I'm always going to tell you to start with a 7.2 medium for that situation.
That's a good point. Yeah, because that's something that I always talk to people about square bills. There's a difference between throwing a 6-foot diver. Again, what's the best cranking rod I should get, Debo? Well, it depends. What kind of cranking are you doing? How big of a bait do you throw? But these are like the 2.5s, and I actually should have got a 1.5 just to compare. But these bigger, I like throwing these bigger square bills a lot. That's one that I painted that just jumped away from us. And this is one of my favorites, the Chartreuse Sexy, talking about the KVD 2.5. But yeah, I messed around throwing with these on that 7.4, and that was something I wanted to talk about too. When you're banging around that heavy cover, generally a shorter rod, guys like, but if you're bank fishing or if you have the room to maneuver, no issue with that 7.4. But the 7.4 is what I've been throwing for chatterbaits and absolutely love it. And Ross and I had talked about before, I've heard it from a lot of people that bass tend to, 9 out of 10 times eat a chatterbait directly from behind. It's not like a lot of baits where they'll kind of swipe at it and hit it. They tend to grab it directly from behind. So having that composite, a rod that's not extremely sensitive where you can feel an ant jump from a log onto your, bait at 100 yards away. You don't need that because you feel that vibration. Even with, the smaller, I was running the Stealth Blade, I could feel the vibration on this rod. And it's not to say it's a super sensitive rod. It's just that's the lure you're fishing. It's got a bunch of vibration, right? And then as soon as you feel something different or kind of a mush into it, just pull into it. And by that time, the fish already has it in its mouth. So that's one of the big positives to using a rod like this, a composite rod. You get a good backbone into it because if you look at the specs of this rod, up to 1 ounce, right? So that's kind of your normal medium heavy rod, which you would think, oh, that's decently stiff. Do I want to throw crankbaits on that? But again, it's that 60%, 40%. So the other 40% of that is glass. And is that all toward the end, Ross?
Well, technically, mostly. Okay, so
most of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I'm sure a lot of the people tonight know. Okay, so when we build a rod, we have this metal rod, and it's called a mandrel. And the material, the carbon fiber, the fiberglass, and there are a lot of different materials being used in the industry for layering, but we lay them out in essentially the shape of a triangle. Okay. So imagine a bunch of slices of pizza laying on top of each other and they roll them up, and that's how the rod becomes what it becomes. So you can mess with the way the rod acts by how much layering there is in a certain spot. So on the composite rods, the majority of the tip is fiberglass, but we had to add some carbon fiber down there to keep the rod from getting that fiberglass big diameter. The draw, besides the weight factor, the drawback to fiberglass is the material is quite thick. So that's why the old David Fritz types of rods, right? That's why they were they were the size of a quarter on the butt section before you put the cork on them. Well, now we've gotten a little bit better with our materials and things like that. But as you build composites, you can shed some of that weight out of the rod, and you can create the diameter in a much better way. So it's a much more of a traditional carbon fiber feel in your hand, meaning what I mean by that is diameter and just weight wise and things like that. So
yeah, and kind of the reason I was asking that is because there's a good backbone in it. Like I just caught a decent one the other night, 3-pounder on it. And I mean, you can pull into them hard and you can feel that end, or like when you cast it, the end is pretty spongy, but once you dig into them, it's got a good backbone into it. So yeah, and you can really use that for any moving bait.
Brennan. And I will point out, Debo, that the action on the tip, the action on that rod for I guess I would call it the last third. A big reason it ended up that way was our pro staff wanting to be able to rip chatterbaits through the grass. and lipless crankbait.
Yes. Yes. And I was going to say that too.
Yeah.
Yes. Before I forget, awesome. Like half ounce. I wouldn't throw a quarter ounce on it, but half ounce lipless absolutely can rip that thing perfect.
Absolutely.
I've talked about that on my channel. I don't like a super noodly crankbait rod for lipless because as soon as you get them stuck and you go to rip it, it's like, meow, and then it's all like, you know, you want
and this is a great example, a tremendous example of, and I'll bring up, look, I think they're doing a tremendous job. The tactical bassin guys. The tactical bassin guys really like a noodly type of lipless crankbait rod. And I have tried them and tried them and tried them. I am not insinuating I can catch fish as well as those guys. It's just not for me. I don't like them that way. I want to be able to rip them a little bit free and have a little bit crisper feel. On a half ounce lipless crankbait, we were joking about it before the show started. My favorite is the Excalibur XR50s. If anybody's got any, call me.
Hey, the Booyah, I think, did you see the video that Jason Christie did? He cut open an old Excalibur and the Booyah, and apparently they're the exact same blank. Like, I don't know if it's a sound thing or if it's a superstition thing, but
this is the only thing I'm going to counter with this. I've gone through this with friends, with buddies. This drives me crazy. One of them is half ounce, one of them is 5/8 or 7/8 maybe, or something like that. So there's different weight sizes, but you can hear the difference in the two of them. I'm so crazy about this. I grabbed both baits one day and I brought them into the house and I made my wife listen to them because I said, "Am I crazy? Or is there a difference?" And she goes, "Oh, that one's totally different than that one." And
they have a couple different versions though. They have the hard knock, and I think it was the hard knock that's supposed to compare to it. So I don't know. I don't have any of the old Excaliburs. I remember them, but I never got into it. But dude, I know you're not alone. There's a lot of guys that swear by them. A lot of guys that swear.
It was by accident. I was one of those guys that said, it doesn't make any difference, until I just had way too many good days on the Excalibur, and I finally was like, oh, if I lose my last couple, I'm gonna die.
How much, and again, we circle back to something we talk about. How much of fishing is confidence? If I gave you two baits, one that you've never caught a fish on, I tell you, dude, it's basically the exact same thing. Or you have the pile of ones that you've caught for sure fish on 30 fish, 50 fish days. You're going to go to the one you're like, oh, I know I've caught fish on this. I'm going to keep buying these, right? It's such a mental game. It's weird.
Totally mental game. Totally mental game.
Okay, let's go to, I did get a question on and I skipped him. I'm sorry. That was it Matt? It was Jersey.
Yeah, Vogel, we're going to come back to you because it's a good question. It's a great question.
I got a couple for you too when you're ready, Debo.
Yeah, make sure we come back to that one because it's a really good question.
We will. I'm not going to parking lot. I'm just going to leave it up for Mike. And actually, okay, South Jersey, does TFO make a swim bait rod?
We do in our Tactical Elite line. We built them
Let's go look.
with, it's the Tactical Elite swim bait rods. It's an 806 and an 807, which means they're 8 feet, and then they're heavy action and extra heavy is the 7 power. Yep, I think you just passed them. They were, I think, towards oddly at the top.
Oh,
scroll back up. I thought I saw swim bait.
I don't see them here. Oh, are they on what I want to say Tactical Bassin? Now I'm having Tackle Warehouse. We're talking about Tactical Bassin. I couldn't even think of what the hell they were called.
Are they not on here? I thought Tackle Warehouse carried them. They might not, now that I say that, which surprises me. Yeah, I guess they don't. It's the 806 and the 807 swim bait rods, and we built them with more of that larger glide bait, larger style of swim baits in mind. The whole problem, and I didn't get the guy's name that asked the question about swim bait. The whole problem with the swim bait industry.
That was Matthew.
Okay, Matthew, you probably know this better than I do. The problem is,
yeah, he's a swim bait nerd.
No two swim bait guys are the same, and it drives the rod manufacturers crazy because.
Okay, well, that's another one here.
We're all
keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, but we're basically, what is your definition of a swim bait? Is what the first thing I have to ask, because most customers are talking about Kitex as swim baits. Well, I call them swimmers, I call them paddle tails because it's like they're not a swim bait. The swim bait is that California deal with 8-inch Huddlestons and stuff like that. But then all of a sudden now there's a huge market of these 5-inch glide baits. And just like the conversation about chatterbaits, you can hurt yourself trying to fish those 5-inch glide baits on swim bait rods. Because most of the swim bait rods that are part of, go to the Tactical Elite page. Yeah, it'll be down towards the bottom. Right
there we go.
Yep. And those two,
1 to 5 and a 2 to 8.
And I will tell you that the 806, it's a mag heavy. It's but you see the mod fast. It doesn't act like that heavy duty fast
like
action
a pike or musky rod.
Yeah.
Like a big stick.
I throw the 806 a lot for my Alabama rigs. When I throw them, just as an example, if that helps Matthew at all. But the two of them are there. The pro staff love them. I don't even own an 807 on a personal basis. I've never thrown one because I don't own a bait. Living in this part of the where I live in Wisconsin, I don't own a bait. I guess I do technically because I own some musky baits, but I just
that's muskellunge territory.
Yeah, which I rarely fish. I'll do it when some friends come to town, but otherwise I'm going smallmouth fishing.
Oh, that was one of my questions for you. What is okay? We're gonna detour real quick, since we answered that one, Matthew. Hopefully that helps. What is your favorite fish to catch up there?
Oh, smallmouth, without a doubt, without a question. The gods came down and blew fairy dust in the north of this country when they gave us smallmouth. They're just look. If anybody's watching tonight and you get an opportunity, go saltwater fishing and catch all sorts of awesome fish saltwater fishing. So I'm not ever going to compare that craziness of saltwater fishing with smallmouth, but smallmouth are like angry.
So mean.
Yeah, they're like the guy at the bar that's 5'2", but you realize you're not going to mess with him no matter what you pay me, because he is going to he's going to just beat you down. Smallmouth are just mad and angry all the time. They're just I love them. I love them.
They got that crazy look in their eye too. Oh. Whenever you catch them, they're like, "Oh man, I dare you to do something stupid. I'm gonna mess you up, man."
Yep. Oh. But I always, my wife knows this line. I say it constantly. They're not to be trusted because they move. They are not to be trusted. If you're a tournament angler, never ever go to sleep and let your head hit the pillow thinking you're for sure going to catch smallmouth the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your favorite bait to throw?
So real quick before you answer that, I will put a little asterisk to that. A river smallmouth would probably beat up a lake smallmouth any day.
Oh, without a question. I just came off the Mississippi River. I fished the Dick Hiley St. Jude's Bass Classic. I got my butt kicked, but I will tell anybody, come to the tournament because it's such a great cause for St. Jude's, all of that. But we get a chance literally to fish. Basically, it's the pool is, if you come in the summer, it's largemouth and smallmouth are pretty equal. When you come in the early spring, it's a smallmouth type of fishery. And the smallmouth, the river smallmouth, they take angry to another level, and they take bitter with life to another level. And they're mad at me for some reason the last couple of years. So I'm not sure why. I've got to try to get on their good side, but yeah, you tie a 3-pound river smallmouth to a 4-pound lake smallmouth, and that 3-pound smallie in that river is going to wear them out.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's go. Go
ahead.
That's all right. Let's get to Mike's question. We've had this up here for a minute, and I'm interested to know this too. I don't know if you guys necessarily get this question. How sensitive is the rod? Like, okay. I've heard ways of dealing with it. How do you answer it? Or how do you tackle that? Not just for you guys, like anything. If you have a guy goes to a store, looks at a Lew's, a Shimano, a Daiwa, what do you tell them, or do you tell anything like?
Well, what I primarily say is, honestly, this is a great question, Mike, but the real reality is there's no great way to answer this, because it is all about balance of the rod for what you're going to feel, what you want for feel. I used to dabble building my own rods about 10 or 12 years ago, drove my wife crazy. It was mostly because I was trying to find the right drop shot rod, but set that aside for a second. Sensitivity, you can take a $20 blank and make it feel like it's $400 of sensitivity because you balanced it correctly. And you can go buy a $250 blank, which I stupidly did multiple times, and made it feel like Kmart had nicer rods. And, and I'm talking about the bargain bin at Kmart, the $10 stuff, right? It's all about feel.
Kmart, rest in peace.
Yes.
The blue light turns its nose up to this stuff.
Yes. But I will look, there are some things you can do. You can grab the rod. You can definitely, if there's carpet, please don't do this on concrete. You can run the tip of the rod over the top of some carbon, just so the grain of the carpet. It'll kind of give you a sense for what you think of it. But really, unfortunately, there's no great way to do it. It all has to do with balance in your hand. Debo, you and I were talking about this, I think, before we went on the air. The one thing that I'll point out to Mike's question is it's semi counterintuitive, but don't allow weight to be the deciding factor in the rod that you purchase, because a lighter rod doesn't mean it's more sensitive. The marketing people in my industry tell you that, but the truth is it isn't a direct correlation between those two things. And as I was telling Debo, Jim Shulin has literally put a rod in my hand, and I've said, this rod feels heavy. And then Jim has put a second rod in my hand, and I said, well, this one feels lighter. I like this one better. And Jim goes, when I put the two of them on the scale, the heavier rod is actually the lighter rod. And it's because the rod that felt lighter was balanced correctly. And that has to do with componentry. It has to do with the handle configurations and all of that. So we can do a lot of it on the rod manufacturing side, but consumers can not mess it up. That's not a fair word, because they can do what they like. Consumers put whatever reel you're happy with on my rod. But if you buy the new Tatula 70 or the Corrado 70, you cannot compare that to a Tranks 300. Okay.
Yeah, and that's something. I've heard from a ton of different companies. Yeah, it doesn't. Not just because the rod is light. Is light. It's good. Perfect example. We were talking before. If you guys haven't checked out Rich Hellabass's live with Gary Dobbins, such a good listen. To him going into in depth and all that. And that's one thing he talks about. Building the Dobbins rods is the balance. Not necessarily, I'm not going to make the lightest rod every time, but if it balances in my hand, for what I'm using it for, you get a completely different experience than just, a heavy. I shouldn't even say heavy. It could be a light rod that's tip heavy, and it feels like it's heavy because you're fighting it all day, right? Depending on what you're using it for. So, yeah, good example. And I've heard, I don't know if anybody else has heard this, but like checking rod sensitivity, you have somebody put the tip of the rod like on your throat or something, and they do something where they like tick it with their finger or something. I've heard of people doing that. I'm like, I don't know. It's hard. Like, I don't know a way to be like,
hey, Debo, do you want to go snipe hunting after this too?
Hey, I grew up in small town Iowa, Randy. The funny thing is there actually are snipe
shot across
birds.
The bow. What?
Yeah. But if you try to take me out, at night with a bag and snipe hunting, that's a different thing. No, I'm not falling for that, Randall.
I will point out the deal on the throat. It was super popular 20 years ago. I will tell you that you virtually could grab any carbon fiber rod for greater than $20.
And that's the thing. Yeah.
Throat, and it's going to feel, you're going to hear that, you're going to feel. So it's really kind of a fallacy. But so that's why I said what I like about, like, because I've dragged them across kind of just the grains of a carpet before, and you can feel some differences between rods. That doesn't always translate that you're going to love the rod when you get it in the boat and fish with it with line and
seeing it's tough.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
I just happen to have this one here. I'm a big line fingerer, and I don't care what rod you have. You can have an $800. I shouldn't say that. I've never used an $800 Loomis, to be fair, but I've got some $300 something rods. And when I hold my rod like this, I always, my trigger's here. I finger the line up here. And if I'm doing anything where I'm running like a jig or a Texas rig, I've always got my finger up here bouncing it where my finger is touching the line, and that alone like helps you so much, because you'll feel that line just barely tick against your finger. So if you're somebody that holds it back here, I don't care how you hold the rod. I can't tell you what's right or wrong. Hell, you can hold it like this. There's people that I know that have held it like this forever. But I'm telling you, if you're that concerned about sensitivity, maybe think about doing that, or look at a rod that you can fit braid into it as well, to your whole system, because braid, without question is far more sensitive than, any nylon lines or, mono or anything like that. So
Alan Witt just said 824, something along the same lines. And I've actually experienced this at the Fisherman's Swap Meet in Des Moines. They had somebody tie a little bit of line on the tip, just like a couple eyelets in, and have it hang down maybe a foot, 2 feet, and then they would like flick it with their other hand while you held the rod, and the line wasn't even connected down to a reel or anything like that. It was just on the tip. For
just
whatever
feeling the
reason,
vibration.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I was just like, that doesn't seem right. And P.S., it's going to be different when there's the whole balancy weighty thing and the whole nine, and you can't just use one thing. I would like Debo constantly orders stuff online. I hope Michelle's not listening, but he orders things constantly. And I'm like, I don't want to ever really order anything online unless I've had it in my hand before.
Yeah,
because
Randy's very
I want to
hands-on,
have that
old school.
feel.
Yep. There's nothing wrong with that. Michael Bradley, that's a great point too. I wish there was something, that every company's got its own thing, from, an XM8 or HM8 to an IM8 to a 24-ton to I'm trying to think of all the things, they use to rate rods, extra high modulus blank. It's like, there's nothing along the lines. And a lot of it, you just have to find something that fits for you. You might be a TFO guy. You might be a Dobbins guy. You might be, a Loomis guy. We were talking about before of lures, rods and reels the same way. You find one that kind of works for you in your hand. And sometimes you just got to try different ones to really get that one that you like. So
because of that last statement of you got to get one in your hand, I like the fact that there's not an industry standard, because I can go out and you said that that luge that I picked up for you didn't like that version of it. I mean, it was 2 inches longer than the one that I have, but I really like
that's
rod.
weird.
And it's just weird that you go from a luge to an Abu to a St. Croix to a whatever, and they're all different. And one thing you could use for like a heavy flipping isn't the same case, and the same rod setup in a different maker. Like forever I used a medium heavy. Yeah, saw that one. Thanks, Debo. I used a medium heavy for my jig rod for forever, and that was an Abu Garcia Vendetta Veritas, something like that. And then I switched to the next Abu version, thinking that they don't make this one anymore, so I'll go up to this next one.
Oh, this will be the same. Yeah.
Nothing the same whatsoever. And I was like, I hate this rod. This is not a rod for me that I want to use. So
yeah,
I like the variety in it.
The variety is good in the sense that the industry can fit kind of everybody. What he brought up about the whole idea, the industry not having a standard, I've talked about with friends for years and years and years and years, probably back to my retail days, because like golf's got the USGA. I think it's the USGA. It doesn't matter, but golf's got a governing body that says a golf club can only be such and such long and can only have
so many grooves on the face.
Yeah, on the face and all those kind of things. We don't have any of that. Now, the positive is we can stretch the bounds of what works for the industry, right? I mean, what works for a fisherman. But the negative is it makes it very challenging for a lot of customers to get into it because they don't understand the differences. And, you know, I have said, look, I joked earlier that moderate fast is not a dirty word in my mind. Okay. I like moderate fast. I think it helps you land fish. As a matter of fact, I know it helps you land fish. I will declare that till I will say that on my deathbed. But when you can't compare two moderate fasts to each other, and you've got a lot of companies that are building extra fast rods when in reality they're not moderately fast, but they're fast rods and not extra fast. But they market them as extra fast. So then a consumer thinks they want to go buy an extra fast. Well, when they get an extra fast in their hand, they can't figure out why they're pulling the bait away from the fish all the time. And so it does create a ton of problems for the customers. Same
thing for medium heavy. Like there's a bunch of companies where I'll pick up on. I've got one actually that I just picked up from Kistler for a frog rod that is frog and toad, and every frog rod that I've ever used is a heavy. I don't go light. I mean, and I'm in Iowa, and it's not like I'm fishing in Florida. But they rate theirs as a medium heavy up to 1 ounce, and you feel this, and this is not a medium heavy up to 1 ounce. You know, so it's like I don't know if it's a tip thing. You know, I've talked to some other rod makers where they'll say, well, it's really a heavy, but because of the way the tip that we've made it, we have to actually label it a medium heavy because of, you know, all these different things. So it's not like, you know, it's not just like, okay, if a rod is rated from baits to this ounce, it's a medium. You know, there's so many different variables. That's what makes it a hard deal. But we'll ask.
I guess I'll go back on my statement just real fast and also say I totally agree with the fact that there needs to be a little bit more, you know,
or even
level
just an
playing field across
like
the board.
Place where you can find 100%. It, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just kind of say this. I just wish more companies were honest about where they fell in kind of the spectrum, because we all know, and I will openly tell you, TFO falls on the softer side of the spectrum. We do, and I'm proud of that. I'm happy about that. I'm helping you land fish when I do that. But if you tell me I fish the mag heavy extra fast frog rod, I want to jerk 3-pounders, you know, 20 yards through the slop, I'm going to tell you, guess what? I'm not your rod brand. Okay.
Because that's okay. Yeah, that's okay.
And that's fine. Like, that's great. Like, go and buy what fits your style.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish more companies were just a little bit more honest about where they fell in the spectrum, because
giving us a reason of why they rate it that way, right? You know, you might not fall this way, label it that way, but why is it rated that way? I think is important for people. But Will asked a good question here. Ross, what is your favorite overall rod that you use? And that was going to be one of my questions. And I think we kind of skipped over earlier, tying on to that too, which might tie into this. Like, what is your favorite bait to throw? Like for me, frogging. If I could frog 364 days of the year, I would be good with that. And on the other day of the year, I would be throwing a soft kicky foot toad instead of the frog. So,
well, it's like anything. I mean, if I could do anything, it would be, I'd throw topwaters for smallies every single day for the rest of my life. But the reality is that if, you know, it's like, what's my favorite bait? My favorite bait day in and day out, it's not the bait, it's the technique, is the drop shot, because I can catch.
Oh gosh. Well, we have to end it. It here.
Hey,
sorry, Ross. It's been good talking to you, but
I can catch smallmouth from when the ice goes out to when the ice freezes with a drop shot. So it's like, you know, I have to.
Let me ask you this: are you always fishing from a boat, or pretty much always from a boat throwing the drop shot?
Yeah, that's a distinct factor. The shore fisherman, because I've watched a number of your videos, and you're absolutely right. It does not lend itself to going uphill. Okay. Yeah. It does not, even if I am in like 12 feet of water and I'm casting to 18, I'll throw a Ned rig almost all like, because I can hop it up the hill easier than I can trying to drag a drop shot up the hill, because you get the line. If you're a shore fisherman, the drop shot is not, in my opinion, not the best, the best way to do it.
There's a ton of guys that make it work, but it's just kind of an inside joke. I'm not hating on all the drop shot guys.
But
it catches fish.
But I'll just say, favorite rod. Okay, on the bait casting side is, without a doubt, it's the 735 MBR. Why? Because the 735,
Which one is that? NBR.
That's just the standard 735 casting rod. I can do all sorts of stuff.
Which line? Do you have a specific line that you like?
The Tactical and the Tactical Elite are the exact same actions. It's just componentry. So if you want the titanium guides, you go to the Tactical Elite. If you want stainless steel guides, you go to the Tactical. You want cork, you go to Tactical. Wind grips are on the Tactical Elite.
And that's something we can talk about too, kind of, because I'll let you finish this. I'm going to leave this here I am sharing, right? Oh crap! I'm sharing the wrong tab. This is what happens when you have two different tabs going, and I'm clicking on stuff and highlighting. You didn't know this was amateur hour with Debo, did you, Ross?
Well, it's okay. I've watched enough of your videos to know Randy's the only one that's got it together. I mean, it's part of the gig, right?
Pretty much. I get comments probably every other video that says Randy's actually the true hero of DEBO'S fishing. And I'm like, yeah. Somebody once commented when you watch, I don't remember who they did the analogy of, but it's like when you watch the old movies and you think the main character is the hero, and then that quotes that had DEBO, but it's like then you grow up and you realize the support character is the person that holds the whole movie together and is actually the hero, in quotes Randy. And I'm like, yeah, that's 100% true. Yeah, I agree.
I remember that too. I don't remember what the analogy was, but that was a good one.
I think it was Batman and Robin. They said I'm handsome and dashing like Batman, but they said you had your stuff together like Robin.
I'm not Robin. Let's just move forward here.
Anyway, okay, so now that I have the right one up, you said, and I was actually
on the casting side, on a bait casting side, I would go with the 735 every single time, every single day. 7.3 medium heavy.
7'3", 5 power, which is your medium heavy mag?
Yep. Which one is that? Yeah, that looks like the right one.
Why do they have two? Medium heavy mag and
I don't know why Tackle Warehouse, actually, I'm glad that you're showing that, because I don't know why they're saying mag.
Oh, whoops. Medium heavy and medium.
Yeah. Yep. So it's the medium heavy. It's the 7.3 medium heavy. We don't actually call them a mag, but regardless, it's a medium heavy bass rod. That rod I can use a ton of different options with. I can switch from fluorocarbon to braid. I can put mono on it and change the rod completely. It's just a great, super versatile rod. at any one time, I probably have 3 or 4 of them in the boat at one time, because I can do a lot of different stuff, whether I'm smallmouth or largemouth fishing. On the spinning rod side of things, I would probably pick a 713, because I can Ned head with it. I can drop shot with it. I can throw swimmer heads with it. It's not ideal, but because I was actually in my mind prepping for this.
Like the 7.1 medium light.
Yeah, that would be that one there. But in a very bizarre way, if you told me I could only fish smallmouth with one rod, you have to go to our website to see it. I would actually pick the 763 walleye rod. And the reason I would is it's crisper than the 7.3 tactical and the Tactical Elite rod. The Tactical Elite rod, we very much.
So one of the scenarios where maybe a moderate fast isn't the best, huh?
Yeah. Well,
are you going back on your moderate fast?
A little bit.
Uh-oh.
It all has to do with versatility.
Absolutely. It
all has to do with versatility.
I get it.
Yeah, and that walleye rod, I like it better to throw a 2.8 Kitech on, as an example. I like it better to drop shot with it. I wouldn't fish a 763 Tactical Elite to drop shot fish. I absolutely would do it on a 713. So I'm splitting hairs there, but those would be the two. The 713 and the 735 would be the two. Spinning and casting, that would be the two I would tell anybody to start with. If you dislike those, if you hate them, you're probably just not really gonna like our actions and our vibe at TFO. But those two really show the heart of who we are with the way our actions work, the versatility our rods give you, all of that.
David had a good question here, and David actually, I think, donated. David, we'll get to it, brother. Thank you for the donation. I'm going to jump to your donation to make sure it's the same question. But before this, quick, we did have a question on, do you have any shorter, and I think it was like shorter butt or anything, like, do you have anything specific to kayak rods, or is it just kind of...
Okay, we don't, but I'll tell you that our butts of our tactical and tactical elite rods are frequently about a half-inch shorter than a lot of people. We've actually got a really good following in the kayak world because of it. The one I would actually push a kayak person, not push, but suggest to a kayak person, is we make a spinning rod that's a 734. And the way the balance worked on that rod, it had a shorter butt section on it. Excuse me. And that rod, because of the shorter butt section on it, the kayak guys really like that 734 spinning rod, just as an example. So we've got a number of them that fit quite well with it. We've got a number of different kayak guys that are part of our pro staff that have helped with it. So it's certainly something that comes up quite frequently.
Man, we've got so many good, y'all. I am loving all the questions and comments we've got. We've got so many good ones I'm trying to get to. White Whale said, which I completely agree, I think a lot of people are not considering the power and action of the rod when just fishing braid, like tie on braid because you like it, right? Well, it's going to act different. And that's kind of what Ross and I were talking about before, is you have to take that into consideration. If you normally fish a faster rod, and like a true fast rod, like let's say a medium heavy fast, like is pretty stiff. You know, there's a lot of quote unquote fast rods that are pretty soft, more of a moderate fast. But if you fished more of a fast rod with not a lot of tip to it, you're going to lose fish on braid. I mean, there's no way around it. You're going to get, unless you're extremely meticulous on how you fight that fish, at some point in time, you're going to give them a little bit of slack, a little bit of, just a little bit of looseness in that line and lose them. So yeah, great point, White Whale. And Gizmo, David, I didn't forget about your donation. We're going to hop to it. I'm just kind of coming up on these three questions that were right before it.
Real quick, before you get to that one, hold on real fast. Yeah. White Whale Fishing also made a great comment that Bruce Lee made the awesome supporting role in the Green Hornet, which let's go with that one versus the Batman and Robin one that you talked about earlier. Sorry, I just had to throw that out there.
Who was the main guy in Green Hornet?
The Green Hornet, that's who it is. You're the Green Hornet in this scenario.
Was that?
I don't know who. I mean, in the remake,
anyway.
It was Seth Green or Seth Rogen or whatever his name is.
No. Okay, so anyway, Gizmo asked, how important is drag setting when setting up your rod, action, and lure combination? That's honestly something that's pretty overlooked, Gizmo. And I'm not for spinning, but on the bait casting side, I am definitely guilty of going a lot heavier than I probably should. And that's why you'll 100%. See me fight the fish. Yeah, you'll see me fight the fish sometimes with my thumb. I'll click it and kind of do my own fighting with the drag, because I generally lock it down pretty tight on a bait caster.
Yeah, unless I totally agree, but I do know a lot of times DEBO somehow sneaks into my truck and loosens all of the drags on every single one of my combos. So I go to catch a fish and I hook it up and I hadn't checked it yet. And it's like strip and drag, fish is gone. PB would have been caught. No cops called, no treasure found, but still.
Every other trip, this guy's like, "Oh, my drag wasn't set. Who messed with my drag?" I'm like, "Dude,
I keep my rods in my front seat, and I don't know if there's elves or gremlins somewhere living in my truck, but somehow every single time I go to cast, the drags are way too loose. I don't get it."
Okay, Gizmo, I agree. That's something that's overlooked a lot. I don't think as much in the spinning world, because I think people are more accustomed to it, fighting a fish on drag with spinning. But
I actually, Debo, I'm not going to say argue with you, but I will point out,
Oh,
I think it's still misunderstood on spinning as well. When I talk to guys that are saying, well, my knot broke, or, my FG broke, or, it's like your drag was set too heavy on your spinning setup. Okay. I mean, every spinning rod that I have in the boat is converted over to braid with a fluorocarbon leader. Every single
Same.
rod that I do. Okay.
Same. Yep.
But I can absolutely tell you that line generally doesn't break. It's just the fact that your drag is set too tight or your rod is too heavy. Because when I first got into drop shot fishing a lot, I was experimenting, started as kind of fun, and then it kind of got a little crazy. I got a little nuts about it, but I started messing around, and I was using 4-pound line for leaders for a while. And
I don't go below 8 anymore.
Okay.
Talk about a drag thing. Like I used to always go pretty like tight, and then I've broke off fish on 6-pound, and again, I was going too tight on my drag. So it's like, listen, I'm just gonna not go below 8. I know I've got the confidence. I know I can just barely have a little bit of drag. So I know what you're talking about. But go ahead.
Well, okay, but that is an example of the 8 will work most days. It will, but there are days where you will just catch more fish on 6. And I will tell you, having messed with it, you will absolutely catch more fish on 4. You're not going to get them all in the boat. Okay. But there again, you will, if you let them swim around with it. Now, since most of what you're doing, Debo, is shore, that changes that equation because you're bringing them to cover instead of away from cover.
I'm bringing them to me, and whatever's in between me and them is a hazard.
And
I can fight fish on 2-pound line. I ice fish. I've caught, my PB crappie and perch this year on 3-pound line. But you have to consider what you're around. You have to consider the cover. What's in your way. Yep. Dax. I don't know crap about G Loomis. I got over at American Legacy, thanks to Gramps for making my pocketbook less full. Bought a couple things over at American Legacy. Good folks, go check them out. But I bought one of the newer G Loomis rods, which are not very expensive, and they had the sale. So I don't know if that's the MBR. Hopefully, Ross.
Well, the MBR.
Softer?
The MBR is an action type of rods that Gary originally designed. So, Dax, the answer for TFO is no. We have some that act like the MBRs do. And the MBRs were traditionally, they were labeled a fast action, but they're really, I'm not going to say they're moderate fast, but they're leaning that moderate fast direction. They're quite parabolic, even though they might be a heavy action. They're quite parabolic for a heavy action or a medium heavy or what have you. So the answer to your question is no, in the sense of we have some that are similar to some of the original stuff that Gary helped us design, but we've since kind of branched out and done a lot of different things and did some different things that way. So not all of them are MBRs at all.
Okay. David I think David is the only donation of the night, which I appreciate. And I never pump you guys for donations. You don't ever have to do it. But just having one, David, thank you for the $10. I appreciate you, my friend. Said with the Pro WC 703 1 7-foot medium light professional walleye casting rod paired with my Shimano Corrado BFS reel make for a good Ned rig rod, or is there a better casting rod for that? Any plans for a BFS rod?
Okay. So first and foremost, I actually think that 7-foot medium light would work quite well for that setup. And David, I have no doubt you get this from your buddies. I'd still tell you to throw a spinning rod because I think it's a better setup. But setting that aside, absolutely that rod would actually work quite well for it. The walleye series, I really kind of, Jim and I have talked about it a bunch. We wish that rod series didn't say walleye on it, because we know a lot of bass guys would gravitate towards it if it didn't say bass rods on it. Matter of fact, Joey Nania, who recently fished the Bassmaster Classic and is one of our pro staff guys, for a very long time, he fished the 703 and the 704 spinning rods for most of his applications, because the bass rods just didn't fit him very well, and he really preferred the walleye rods. But David, I absolutely think that. And as far as plans for a BFS rod, it's probably not. It's a tough market to sell.
It's a weird industry. Yeah, it's a weird market and a weird industry. Like, you've got the diehard guys, and I gave it a try, but it's like, I'd rather just use my ultralight spinning. Like, if I'm throwing like a little 32nd or a 16th, I'd rather use that. And it just kind of comes down to a preference thing. But
it's really about whenever I mean, look, nobody wants to hear the dirty truth, but the dirty truth of the industry is, when we start to design rods, we got to figure out who we're going to sell them to. And the BFS rods are tough to sell to, to the lower 48. You've got niche places that will, but it's hard. Great BFS rods are really more, check with your specialty shops and or your custom rod build type setups. And that's really where you can get some of the really good ones.
Taco Bob said, and I was just reading through and I saw the niche. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not an English major. BFS is a niche market, just like the swim bait enthusiasts with their $1,200 swim baits, not mainstream. Yeah, man, the swim bait, dude, that is something that has absolutely blown up the last few years. And it's like an underground thing of, like, dudes just love to give up their conventional stuff and huck these big baits and have like these big collections of them. I'm not mad at it. That's the cool thing about fishing is you can be a guy that fishes only Ned rigs. You can be wrong about fishing and fish a drop shot and be just my mortal enemy. I'm not going to say it's wrong. We're just not friends. No, I'm kidding. Or you can be like me, some dummy that just likes to throw a frog around and get dirty with slime and slop. That's the fun part about fishing, right? Everybody's got their own deals. So,
I mean, I'm sure I'm sure your listeners know. I mean, Ned Kedney, the guy that is Ned from the Ned rig. I mean, he was almost exclusively a shore fisherman. I shouldn't say exclusively. He did a lot of stuff in a boat, but he fished a lot from it, and he was doing all that kind of stuff. He was doing that when it was totally niche-y. Now, the funny part is when we laugh about it up here in, I originally was from Minnesota and I cut my teeth over there, but we for years fished what was called a jig worm. And you took a 7-inch Berkeley power worm and you cut the first couple inches off it and really made it about a 4.5-inch, 5-inch worm. And you stuck it on a gopher head, mushroom head, the original one, because it was the only one you could get with a Gamakatsu hook on it. That was they were great. And this is late 90s stuff. And we fished them like crazy. And so we were Ned fishing before the Ned rig was popular. But yeah, it's all of that kind of stuff comes and goes and different things. But yeah, the BFS market, the swim bait market, there's just a number of different markets that I encourage guys to experiment with and try, because they're fun and exciting and the sport is so tremendous because it's diverse and all of that. But, I would absolutely say check with your custom rod builders and things like that for some of your nichier stuff, because especially like on the swim bait market, it's so hard because, as I was saying earlier, define a swim bait to me before I'll tell you what our swim bait rod's for. Because
right. Are you fishing a big single hook swim bait that's, like rigged weedless? Are you fishing a treble hook swim bait? Are you, dude, I couldn't believe we're already an hour 24 in. We're gonna start peppering you with some quick questions here.
Okay.
A fish with Gramps. I love you, brother. But I just want to say real quick, he said baloney, drop shots work fine from the bank. This is how far behind I am. He said the weight is in the same place as the Ned. Well, Gramps, I'll just say a frog works just as well as a chatterbait from a kayak. So I'll leave it at that. Building a rod. Okay, so here's one that we put in the parking lot. First time using the parking lot. This parking lot is brought to you by Randall, sponsored by Randy. Thank you, Randy, for sponsoring this whiteboard. But the question was, and I didn't write down who it was from. I don't know if this was Mike, but it said building a rod. So this is a good one, and I don't know if I kind of put this in or if this is what the question was. Like I said, my memory's bad, but so building a rod for a pro. So let's say like you bring a sponsor pro on, KVD or Greg Hackney, somebody who has like a perfect mindset of these are the rods I like to fish. So building a pro, like building a rod for a pro versus building a rod for, I labeled it as Joe's. Like, how do you build a good generic rod? Sorry.
Let's not do that again.
Sorry, that was high pitch. Versus building a rod to kind of fit the industry. And I don't know if somebody made this quote or question. I kind of wrote this down as things that popped in my head, but you see this all the time of you get a specific series for somebody. Oh, the KVD series, let's say from Lew's. And let's say they worked with KVD to make these exactly how KVD liked. Versus how do you build a rod for like the general public, something that's good for, kind of everybody, versus building a rod that's going to kind of fit these industry standards. Like, okay, we know looking at our statistics, 7 out of 10 sales are for a 7-foot medium heavy. Like, you see that so much. You go to Walmart and buy a rod, it might just say 7-foot medium heavy. It doesn't even list the action on it, right? And we can pretty much assume it's going to be a fast. That's what we've had, drilled down our throats. So how do you guys kind of tie all that together if you're working with somebody and that might be too big of a question, but I had it in the parking lot and
it is and it isn't. Okay. So we first and foremost we did it in our past with Cliff Pace. We built a number of rods that were exclusively
Cliff was on your team. Okay.
Yeah. Kind of his designs. And those work and they're fabulous. And those types of series are really fun to do, but they do get inherently, at times they can easily get nichey because it depends on.
I want you to build me a rod for exactly what I like type thing.
Yeah.
Right?
It becomes challenging. So the pacemakers we had in our past, Cliff did a great job with them. Now, one of the things that's quite interesting about Cliff, even though he's from Mississippi and he fishes a lot of the Delta waters and stuff, he's actually a ridiculously diverse fisherman and really built a pretty diverse set of rods. But you can find situations where the pros want you to go down a rabbit hole, and the rabbit hole is the hole of death, because it's like it's got to be this certain way. And you're kind of going, okay, that's going to work if the consumer buys the exact line, the exact reel, and the exact swim bait you're throwing, or the swim jig, or the frog, or whatever the circumstances are. So we lean towards absolutely building much more of diversity in our rods. And we have in our tactical and our tactical elite rods, we have categories where we kind of pigeonhole them, but we don't actually we try to stay away from, this is a square bill rod and this is a Texas rig rod. And the reason why is when you get in the room with these pros, it's really interesting.
Let me look that up.
You'll ask like 6 guys, right? And they might not all be touring professionals, but Ben Nowak, as an example, and Jeremy Francis fish just as much as a touring pro does in many cases, right? They'll have a rod that they use for a certain technique, and it's not even close to what Bill Weidler fishes or what Joey Nania fishes. And we'll have literally 5 different spectrums. So that's why we really focus on just kind of building a set of tools and kind of going, hey, if you want to throw this rod for this technique, great. But, we don't really pigeonhole them very often. We do a little bit, like you just had it on the screen. We had a 610 shaky head rod as an example, but that's really that Ned shaky, anything dragging on the bottom, that kind of vibe.
Yeah, that's That's something I was going to ask because I've kind of gone back and forth with folks on like technique, quote unquote technique specific rods. So I think it really is a double-edged sword because on one end, and I think it's how you list it, right? So like if I go to your website and I don't see it here, I was hoping maybe you'd have it. But when you look at a website, a lot of times you go into a category and see, okay, so there's 710 medium heavy. Like if I'm a new guy and I'm looking at this, what would that be good for? I'm like, I don't know, so sometimes they'll list on the website, like, 710 medium heavy up to 3 ounce would be good for, deeper cranking, being a moderate chatterbait, whatever, versus labeling this let's say you labeled it a chatterbait rod. And if I'm a newbie, I go here and go, oh, I don't want a chatterbait rod. And then I automatically skip over it, where this rod, and I guess maybe 710 was a bad example, but maybe the 7 foot would technically be like the best rod for him. So I don't know. To me, that seems like that would be really hard for a company. Okay, do we want to do these, these quote unquote technique specific where I name a rod versus just leaving general stats and hoping that the person goes here and looks at, the description to see, well, actually this rod is good for, 4 or 5 things, not just that one.
Yeah, and a lot of industry companies went down have gone down the path of very technique specific rods, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. We'll use and this is, look, Falcon makes a beautiful rod. I have nothing against them in any way. Well, we'll use Jason Christie's recent win at the Bassmaster Classic. Jason Christie has forgotten more about spinnerbaits than I'll ever know in 5 lifetimes. He's an exponentially better fisherman than me. But his rod is likely an outstanding rod. But it's part of what his process is. And he wins the Bassmaster Classic, so people go and buy that rod, but they fish it completely different. They fish it with smaller spinnerbaits or bigger spinnerbaits or different line. And then they go, well, I don't like this rod, but they don't have the heart to kind of say it to themselves because they spent so much money on it. So that's why we have categories, but we try to stay away from it a little bit because just more and more we're running into a situation where a Florida pro wants a completely different flipping stick than I fish with in Wisconsin. And so we're always kind of just saying, it's better to kind of nudge them in a direction, but leave the consumer and the ability to kind of grab what they want to have.
Sure. And that's just kind of a marketing thing. Like,
I'm just going to step in, dude. Come on, you're killing me, Smalls. It's
the fishing. Hold on, I actually have to ban the fishing spot reviewer for saying such a travesty on my channel. I'm kidding, brother. Again, that's the cool part about fishing is I would literally, if I died right now and went to fishing heaven, they'd lock a frog in my hand and it would be some swampy, grossy place where I can just have fish blowing up through the muck. And you talk to 4 or 5 other people that'd be like, dude, that's the worst fishing ever to do. That's what's so fun about fishing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I had a couple other good questions here. I'm gonna hit you with a couple more questions and we'll get out of here. We've still got 230 people watching.
I do have one question also before we
go for it, Randy. What do you got? I got mine pegged, so I won't forget.
I just gotta ask, how is it decided, or what is the logic or thinking behind the location of the hook keeper for your bait? I don't. So many of them have moved behind the reel versus in front of the reel. Me personally, for whatever reason it is, I always seem to grab my reel, and where I grab a hold of the rod when I go to unhook the bait from the keeper the very first time, I'm usually catching a hook in my finger or my hand somehow.
Okay, this is such a great question, and I'll tell you why, Randy. Okay, and I've said this literally all 27 years of my career. Do you know what the number one comment we get at TFO, and we got when I worked for Shimano and G. Loomis, and we got when, like in my past when I worked retail? It was about the hook keeper. Okay. Okay. And I've read this, and if there's a car guy here, believe me, I'm not even positive it's 100% factual, but I've read this, that the number one complaint Chevy gets on a car is about where their cup holder's at in a car. Okay.
Okay.
And if we put 7 hook keepers on a rod, it would not be right for you. And I don't mean it like I joke, because every rod manufacturer, we have talked about this. Fitzgerald came up with kind of a cool idea. They did it on both ends. They put it in front of the rod and behind the rod. They actually did it twice. And I'll give them credit. I thought it was kind of an interesting idea. But Cliff Pace will tell you, if he buys a rod from anyone and there's a hook keeper in front of the reel, he will cut it off immediately because the line will catch on it. Okay.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. 100%.
So and I remember specifically, this was about 10 years ago, and I remember a guy saying that to me, and I remember thinking, well, that's crazy. I've never hooked my line on my hook keeper. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. And no lie, I did it the next time I went fishing, and I laughed like a belly laugh in the boat, because I'm like, I just did what I said was the dumbest thing. So it's kind of I'm long-winded when I say this, but the reality is it comes down to, we'll send different configurations out to the pro staff. Mm-hmm. The pro staff, by and large, dominantly wants it behind the reel for a couple of different reasons. Primarily, it's driven by boat manufacturing, in the sense of how the baits and the rods sit in the rod locker boxes. The second,
I've heard the same thing. I've heard the same thing from yak anglers. If you put it in back, yak guys who put it in like I don't know what the hell they call them, like the crate things where it fits in like a tube. If it's in back, like if you have your bait on, hopefully I don't break this. If you have the bait back here, you can't put it in the tube because it's hitting your bait, right? So I hear arguments both ways.
That's the counter to it. The other thing that's more and more predominant is a bunch of pros have told TFO, when we've talked to them about this, that they hate having the bait in front of the reel, because it'll catch on the rod socks and or the other rod socks.
So that's okay. So I was a huge proponent. Dude, I was a huge proponent of having the hooks up, like the deal up here. So if I'm fishing a frog, a Texas rig, a jig, I can undo it and go. Back here, I feel like I was always like grabbing at it, fumbling with it. However, for crankbaits, when you put the rod sleeve all the way down, and I even use like line covers. Well, then if I have a line cover on it, my rod suck doesn't go all the way down. It's hitting here, unless I have one like this 6th Sense one, which they've done something kind of different, which is cool. They have like the elastic, so you can vary how long you want this. Yeah, but like a regular one, like, most of the rod socks you see out there, they have the little elastic deal here on it. And if the rod's a little bit longer, you can't get that down on it. So putting it back here, I actually like for crankbaits, because you can put your bait wrap on it. You can put this on and you don't have anything in front. So it's like, there's not going to be a perfect answer ever. Again, it's one of those preferences.
The more I think about it, there's more negatives, because I have a lot of issues, because I jig. Like, jigging is my go-to. And the hook keeper that you have, which isn't like a complete circle or anything like that, it's kind of like a little, I don't know what you want to call it. It kind of looks like a J. I get my line as I'm popping my jig or what I'm working my jig around. That line flips around and grabs it on the backside all the time. It's regularly. I don't know, Debo, when we went out yesterday, I don't know how many times I had to fish it out from the back side of it, because it was a tighter one that was more against the rod versus a little bit wider out. And that's even more of a pain, because, you're probably damaging your line when you're trying to pull it out. You know what I mean? So it was more of a question. Good answer. There's no good answer as to where it goes or how it goes there.
Look, Randy, honestly, there isn't. And the truth is, there are, they're just, if that is kind of your deciding thing, I respect it. Like, hey, I want it in the front. Okay.
Honestly, it would never be a deciding factor for a rod. Me, 100% ask Debo. It's how it feels in my hand. I'm probably going to complain about it every
Dude, I
now and
don't.
then. Oh man, I just stuck my hand. But at the same
I don't
time,
even care. Yeah, if it's one of those where it has
yeah,
it behind, and Randy, I think this is the one you were talking about. This is a lose
yep,
speed stick or
yeah.
whatever.
It
Yeah,
was a
these I've
loose rod
noticed
I
where
was
it's
using.
kind of a one like that. They will kind of go under it and grab it sometimes. But I
Hmm.
honestly, I have a really bad habit of not even using these, and you'll see it on this reel. See how the nose is all scratched up? I have a real bad habit of just hooking any bait that I have right here on the reel. Some people cringe
Probably
when I
half
do it,
my,
but
yeah, don't feel bad. Probably half my
I do it
rods in
all the
my
time.
rod locker box right now in my boat in the shed is
Yeah.
exactly that way.
I don't even use it because you don't have to work. And it might not be as bad for like a boat guy, but as a bank guy, when I'm taking these in and out of my truck, as I grab the line, like when it's on like a little, like one knot like this, it'll just pop off because, like one little movement will pop it off there. Whereas if I hook it up here, I can grab line and stuff. It's not popping off. So,
Hmm.
okay. Lucas, I'm sorry, brother. We've been going
Yeah.
around and around on questions. So he had a good question for you. He said, what's the best all around bank fishing rod from TFO? So he did say, need a new rod and would like to try TFO. Moving baits mostly. So Lucas, I'm thinking like probably spinner baits, chatter baits, maybe some square bills, which actually TFO is nice because they've got, more of the moderate fast for the moving stuff. But what would you recommend, Ross, if you had if somebody's
Okay.
saying, listen, I only got enough money for one rod?
It would be one of two things. It would be one of two rods. If your budget is 99, well, I think it's 109 technically, would be the professional series 704
It's
because
a
it's just
7-foot 4-power.
Yep, 704. It's the seven. I'm sorry. The 704 would probably be the one I would recommend, or potentially the 705 if you wanted to throw a little bit bigger moving baits. Okay.
Sure.
What
Yep.
I
And you
like
can see
about,
there. So,
yeah, it's moderate fast, so you can
yep,
get away with a little bit more of a
those
moving
must be
style.
popular.
Yeah,
Both out.
yeah, they both are. They've been crazy the last couple of years.
Let's see.
But the 704 or the 705, depending upon what action you really want, I would lean 704. But if you're going to throw anything slightly bigger, the 705 is the better way to go. Okay. But if you're willing to step up to $160, I'd absolutely tell you the 7.4 glass bass rod is a fabulous multi-purpose moving bait. You can chatterbait, you can lipless crankbait, you can square bill with it. You can throw, like last year when we came out with those, I ordered 2 of them, and I think I've got 4 of them now from a personal perspective. I've got them loaded up with everything that moves. Now, because they're composite, Lucas, they're not going to double for other things. And what I mean by that is they because they're composite, they do not have the sensitivity that a full carbon fiber rod does, the way the professional 704 or 705 does. So that would be my 2 choices for you as far as recommendations for what you're giving. Now that being said, you also literally could buy a 735 from either the tactical or the tactical elite line, and the 735 would give you just a ton of diversity and options. It's going to be a little crisp for throwing chatterbaits. It's going to be a little crisp for throwing lipless crankbaits. You're going to have to make sure that you diligently don't set the hook quite as fast. Let them get that bait in their mouth, things like that. That's why that composite rod is so much better on a moving bait. But that would be what I'd recommend.
I like it. I'm scrolling through questions here. Listen, we've still got
hey,
240 people watching. So if you have a question, pop them in there now. Hopefully not anything that's like a chapter answer. But if you've got quick questions, we're going to bump through quick. And then I'm going to say maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then we're going to roll. We're at an hour 45. Go ahead, Randy.
real
Sorry.
fast.
Yeah.
I know it was Fishing the Southeast around like an hour plus ago. Asked about, this is totally kind of off topic, but he asked about a flapjack and I think this is what he's talking about, a Nichols Flapjack lure. It's a soft plastic. I don't know, Debo, if you've ever heard of it before or not,
Oh, is this the one
but
that
I
looks
know
like the
it's
Rage
on
Menace?
kind of like the Rage Menace, but it's got the tail fin that actually looks like the fin of a
The
fish.
Rage?
I,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
almost got
kind
those
of.
like little Rage flanges on it. Yeah, I haven't
Yeah,
tried them yet, but
they.
sorry.
Good job, buddy. Um, I thought those will look pretty cool, and I just kind of wanted to bring it up. I know it's not on topic, but kind of, but not really.
Yeah.
Um,
Hey, dude, we'll talk about baits anytime. Yeah, I think that would be a good not only chatterbait trailer, but especially swim jig. Something that
oh
has its
yeah,
own action to
definitely,
it.
100%.
Let's see. I lost my place. It went to current time because I was so far behind. So let's see. Oh, Bass for Dave. Yeah, I was laughing at that. There's some conversation going on in the comments here. There's been some rig and bait stuff. Some of them I was cracking up before, but yeah, Bass for Dave has it 100% right. Even dragging a Ned rig uphill, it doesn't matter if you've got a drop shot, a shaky head, a Ned rig. Chunk rock is going to eat bottom contact lures. I don't care what you have. You can go as light as you can to try and get away with it. You know, it doesn't matter if it's a drop shot or a Ned rig. It's going to eat lures regardless. So I completely agree with you, dude. And I give a little extra hate to drop shots just because I hate tying the whole thing. It's just one of those things that I don't know. I don't like
Well,
it. But
would you rather tie a drop shot, or would you rather tie an FG knot?
oh, I don't tie FG knots ever. I'm an Alberto guy. I can tie an Alberto with my eyes closed in my sleep.
I saw that in one of the other videos, and I was kind of like, apparently you don't like casting distance. It's okay. No, I mean, I actually
shots fired.
Yeah, shots fired. But I need to actually try the Alberto because you got to have four hands and both your feet to tie the FG knot on the fly. And God willing, the wind isn't blowing.
I don't have opposable toe thumbs like a monkey to be able to tie the FG knot from the bank. No, I don't. It is. I completely agree with you. It is a much thinner knot, and it does cast better. But for when I'm doing that stuff, I'm pretty much target fishing. Like if I'm throwing a Ned rig or, I'm casting off a rocky jetty, or I'm not even going to say drop shot because I don't throw that on my spinning rig, but like a little swim bait or anything. It's not like I'm trying to cover a big, huge flat or something. So
yeah, I openly admit, like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I got into tying the FG knot because of the hair jig for smallmouth, the marabou jig. And you're casting such a light. I mean, it's,
sure.
I got totally into hair jig fishing the last couple of years, and you have to tie it. So, but it was a joke. But hey, somebody asked a question earlier. White Whale asked a question where I saw it. White Whale, we are an import company. Our bass rods are made in China or Korea, depending upon which series it is, and they are labeled on our website. We don't hide behind that at all, and we're proud of the people that we work with, in the sense of, not from the geopolitical standpoint, but from the perspective of building really, really great stuff for us.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, a lot of people shy away from that, and I've kind of gone back and forth to this. I need to get him on here because we actually talk quite a bit now. I won't go over the name, but I had a person kind of trolling me before of, oh, you use Luz or you use this, like that crap's all made in China. I only use Shimano, and I kind of got, like, I usually don't ever feed the trolls and get into it unless it's something funny. But we had a conversation. He's like, dude, I only use Shimano reels. I'm like, dude, I can't knock that. Shimano makes some of the best reels around. And he's like, I'm using the X Pride. If you're using anything besides a Japanese made, rod, you're an idiot. And I'm like, well, hold on. X Pride is an awesome rod. However, that's made in China.
And I was just going to say, I knew that one before you started saying it. I'm like,
yeah. And we kind of got talking. And he's like, dude, I'm so sorry. I was a prick. And, that stuff kind of happens. But, so many people get into that of, oh, if it's made in Japan or Korea. And I think kind of the old debate of Daiwa, Shimano, those things being made in Japan, they were better. And I think a while ago, that's true. Like you look at the old, E7 Corrados, the mean greens, dude, those are some of the best reels still now. I had to go on the hunt to find some because I had one and sold it for like $40 like an idiot because I didn't know how to clean my reels at the time. And then I was just pissed and went on this kind of rampage to get one. But those were made in Japan. Well, now you look at stuff and anything up until like what 300 and something bucks ish isn't made in Japan anymore. You're looking at Taiwan, Malaysia for Shimano and Daiwa, and stuff in China and or Korea is just as good now. You've got a lot of companies, they're setting the standards, and I'm not saying everything. Each company is kind of on its own deal, but just because it says it's made there doesn't mean it's going to be crap. But I don't know. I kind of use stuff all over. So
yeah, and I'll just point out because I've said this to a lot of people. We have monthly meetings with our partners in both Korea and in China, and it doesn't take you very long to realize, you know what, that's a business person over there trying to build the rod that I need built, and they're trying to make a living, and it becomes very human very, very fast. So I'm not going to disrespect the conversation about the geopolitical side of it, but the reality is there's some really great product coming out from overseas in a lot of different places. And I would just ask a consumer to judge the product for the product.
I preach it all the time. I don't care where it's made. I'm going to use it. If it works, I'll tell you about it. If it sucks, I'll tell you about it. I'm not going to say it's good or bad based on what I've read on it, so yeah. Gramps did have a good comment. I don't actually have a lose. Oh, actually this one does. I believe this is I haven't got it spooled up yet. Gramps, you're right. You haven't seen many frog catches yet this year. I have not caught a frogfish yet, but Lose does have the little hook keeper here. Gramps brought that up. If I can show it. I thought it was stupid at first. I'm like, this is a stupid little plastic gimmick. However, I use it on all my Lose reels that actually have it. This folds out of the way up under where the gearbox is, and then you just grab it with your fingernail and it folds out. And just today I was flipping and pitching with the Texas rig. This is open, and you can just take your Texas rig off, flip it, and then hook it back. So I've admitted that a time or two that I called them a stupid gimmick at first, and now I use them. So Lose, I'm sorry I judged you.
I just always forget about doing it.
Yeah, I like them. Mantuba, I'm going to come back to you, Joshua. I do know you are a winner. I was actually just double checking my emails now. I saw you emailed me again, brother. I will get your giveaway out. I'm probably 3 weeks behind on giveaways. That's why I didn't do a giveaway tonight, because I'm irresponsible and don't get them out right away. Randy, I'm gonna have to put you in charge of giveaways. That way I can just say you're the person.
Say it's my fault.
But Mantuba, I do know you win. I got your brother. He said, what's the deal with micro guides? I don't think, do you guys use any of the micro guides or no?
We don't. Okay, we do and we don't. It depends on what your definition of micro guides is, because we have some rods with size 5 guides as an example. But the true micro guides are size 4 and
kind of more
smaller.
the medium.
Yeah. And they have their place. They've run their kind of course. We're not seeing it as much as an industry. The biggest problem you ran into, not even the biggest, it's just they didn't handle the rigors very well for most consumers, especially like braid with any slime on the braid. Like you, DEBO'S, probably didn't like them particularly well because they probably got clogged up with gook a lot because they were so
horrible
small.
For frogging. Yeah, especially like when the cotton comes out, they're useless. But I don't hate them for like if I'm casting and retrieving with like a fluorocarbon. I don't necessarily hate it. I think you just need to know ahead of time, because like if you use connection knots on like micro guides, they're junk.
Eesh.
You just it's hard.
I feel like they're way too sensitive. Also, they're not sensitive, but fragile, I should say. Every true micro guide that I've had, like I think I've broken them.
Randy,
like a true micro.
You're not wrong about that. It's not about fragile. It's just about, you can only make that ring support that ceramic piece and or the other materials that are being used, right? There's a bunch of them out there, but you can only make that kind of so small, and then the surface area just gets more and more challenging for it to hold on to. So yeah, I'm not saying they've run their course and they're going to die, but if Jim wanted us to build a rod that had micros on it, boy, I'd really he'd have to talk me into it.
Like you can ask Debo. He's looked at my gear. I mean, he's got one of my favorite reels ever still in his possession that he just won't give back to me. I'm not.
Dude, I'm so sorry. I will make it a point to get that done next week. Hold on.
I'm not easy on my gear. I'm gonna use it just like I drive a truck, and it's something that my dad put into me, or like just like put into my way of thinking is I bought a truck because I'm gonna use it as a truck. I bought fishing gear because I'm going to use it as fishing gear. Although I am going to now and have started this year babying them a little bit more with reel covers and rod socks on everything. Like I'm kind of walk up to the shore and not throw it to the ground, but drop it on the ground and keep going. But like I said, the micros they've seemed to break on me because I'm just not sensitive enough, I think.
Yeah, you're too like
you're too hard on
a china shop with your stuff.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, I am. Yeah.
I've been reading a couple of the comments on the side. I just want to throw this out there.
Go ahead. Yeah, throw out stuff now. I'm trying to
guys.
Real quick, I'll just say Gabe's in the house. Gabe, 10 horse Monty. He did say he makes TFO makes a good fly rod. Love my 8.6 3-weight. Gabe, appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Check out his
10
channel.
Horse. On the comments coming through on the FG knot, there is if you search on YouTube, Salt Strong, they're a saltwater company, doesn't make any difference. They've got a fabulous kind of chat board and stuff for the inshore guys. But more importantly, Lucas, the guy that does their videos, has the best FG knot video I have seen. And it involves wrapping around your pinky and having the rest of your both hands to operate. And
I think that was the one I started to watch, and I was just like, oh my God, this is a lot. I'm a Palomar guy through and through. That's what I do.
Randy, it is a lot. It is a lot. But I'm telling you, if you're gonna go down the rabbit hole of the FG knot, I'll give Salt Strong credit. They have the best system.
I'm gonna get Stubby down here.
It looked like he had everything the way it needed to be, and was unlike what I ever do when I go to start tying a knot that is complicated and not a Palomar. Like he was ready and prepared for everything that he needed. I'm just like, here, I'm doing this right now. And then it never holds. And then I spend 38 minutes trying to tie my double uni. And then my first cast broken because I snagged it and tried to pull too hard. And and then I end up throwing straight braid on my spinning rod, and Debo outfishes me 100-1. So
it does happen. It definitely does happen.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of patience. And my bigger thing is like, if I'm gonna do it, the very first time I do it, I have to like be sitting in front of my computer and I'm watching it as he's doing it, because I'm like a hands-on, do it as I see it being done, or I'm never gonna get it done. Mr. Stubbies.
We got a Stubby appearance.
Heck yeah. Everybody was
kiddos and the dog had to say goodnight. Let's see. Yeah, I saw some comments about, we were talking about the stuff either made here, all that stuff. Yeah, I use it for what it is, and I'll tell you how it performs. Let's see. So let's do a couple more questions. We're almost at 2 hours. Holy crap.
Fire away.
Let's see. Do we have any other questions that are absolutely here? Dustin, good one. So what's your policy for rod tips? I have multiple rods from multiple companies, and it seems I can't find the proper rod tip for any of them. Can a customer get multiple tips easily? So are you talking about like a tip replacement? Like, let's say you break the tip and you can't get the exact one like for that rod, is how I read it.
Yeah, either that, or if Dustin's talking about multi-piece rods, we sell parts. We're one of the few companies that are still doing it in the industry, mostly because we do it on our fly side. Okay, our fly side, we sell parts to fly rods, because when a fly fisherman is walking down the bank, he's going to trip and fall, and they're going to break, or they're going to high stick a trout while they're trying to get it in the net, in a trout stream, and they're going to bust the tip of the rod. So we sell them rod tips all the time.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know anything about the fly fishing. So Dustin, hopefully that helps you. Oh yeah, he said, Debo, you're right. Tips. Yeah, Dustin, that's a tough one because I know what you're saying. If I go to Walmart or wherever and buy like one of the Fuji guide tips, it's nice, but you have to be very careful on like if you want it to match because they have the different sizes. But I would say just call the company, TFO, I'm sure Daiwa, whoever you call, I think a lot of them will probably sell you the tip, like they do a parts thing.
We won't sell you the tip because we don't have the tips available. But what we do have is we have the exact sizing. The only thing that that he needs to be careful of is if you broke a little piece off of it, the size is
bigger,
right? Yeah. So
yeah,
you're almost better off taking it. Excuse me. You're taking it to somebody that does custom rod work in those situations.
That's a good point. Yeah. Or if you get the Fuji, I've had really good luck with the Fuji. I mean, obviously Fuji's a name in the industry. But if you get the Fuji one, I think they have like 2 or 3, maybe 3 tips when you get the tip replacement. And so far one of them has always fit, is an exact like perfect fit. No, but it's better than having to trash the rod. Let's see. There was
you should
another good
also
question.
watch the or read the instructions and go easy on any type of heating elements. Isn't that right, Debo? You don't want to start a fire or burn anything.
Listen, I've tried the damn lighter thing on 2 rods to replace the tip, like where you have to burn the tip off where it breaks. And I've burnt the actual blank. I guess I'm holding it too tight or like
you're holding it far too close. It was something I had to learn doing custom rod work on my own like 10, 12 years ago. You've got to hold that thing 8 to 10 inches below. You do not want it very close to the blank.
And if no blow torches.
And you're far better off.
I didn't use a blowtorch.
You're far better off doing, it's actually like a little lantern with denatured alcohol. And go about
like one of those warming deals.
Yeah, and then you can just kind of wave it like this underneath it because the wick will stay lit, but it'll just kind of kick off enough heat to get the tip popped off.
I figured that was the deal. Yeah. I've sawed both the 2 that I had where it broke at the tip, and then just put new tips on and just dealt with. And both of them held up. So hey, I mean, even a dummy can fix a rod.
DEBO'S ultralight turned into a medium heavy after he was done with it.
Hey, well, it's a foot
medium
and a half
heavy
shorter,
with
but it works for me.
4 eyelets, yeah.
I'm just a dumb guy from Iowa fishing dumb frogs and whatever I can. Fishing with Gramps. Yeah, Fishing with Gramps. We've talked about this before. He said, please thank TFO for their support of Heroes on the Water. I was blessed to win a HOTW branded TFO rod, which is Heroes on the Water. It took me a second to register. I'm like, did he mistype that? No, Heroes on the Water. Brandon, TFO rod in a charity tournament. Thank you on behalf of the veteran community. Yeah, absolutely, Gramps. Always thanks. Always big appreciation to the veterans. And do you guys do like a discount for veterans or anything like that?
We don't. We want to. The biggest problem we run into is we can't monitor. We can't.
How do you do it? Yeah.
How do you do it? So we do things like Heroes on the Water, and we do other groups like that. Like we will support all of that. We love it and we cherish it and we absolutely want to be a part of that. But you can't if you say 10% off, then it's like, oh, I was a veteran. Well, how do you ask a veteran to prove it? So it's such a slippery slope. So that's why we do things like Heroes on the Water. We do a lot of different things, a lot of different communities. We have a lot of different 501c3s that we work, 501, whatever, the charity groups that we work with at various points and that are veteran related. And we stand behind it and we're very proud of what we do with them. So.
Mike, let me know. Mike asked, Debo, put a link to that video in the details of the upload. Which video, Mike? And Rob Harrison, a buddy that I've met online. I mean, Rob is always on my lives. We've talked back and forth. He said goodbye to his grandmother today. So Rob, thoughts out to you and the family, brother. I know that's always tough. I went through that and it's never fun. Doesn't matter who it is. So thoughts out to you, brother. I'm just trying to go through and grab a couple more questions. We did have a stubby appearance. That's how
I
far
think it was
behind I
the
am.
link or the name of that video for the FG knot. I was trying to see if I still
Oh,
had it up here.
Yeah, it was Salt Strong, Lucas's deal. I mean, once we're off this, I can send it to you. It's not, and then you can post it on the deal. It's just the easiest one I've been able to find.
I think other people have told me about that one too. Look up Salt Strong, because I'm like, no, I'm an Alberto guy. They're like, look up this one.
Yeah,
I'm
Yeah,
stubborn and
you
I'm just
start
going to keep on the
you start
Alberto.
typing it in and
Yep.
Salt Strong, and then it's FG knots first thing that popped. Yeah, that was the one I was just looking at.
Yep. You wrap it around your pinky, and then you have the rest of your fingers to work with. And it's the FG knot is still the FG knot, but it's the best way I've ever been able to tie it.
Oh, here's Dustin's, just to follow up on that. He said, no, I wanted to know if I bought 3 rods, could I call with the model numbers and you all send me, say, 6 tip guides?
No,
So
we
I
wouldn't.
think, no, it's not a
No,
deal.
we wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, we could tell you what size it is, and things like that.
Oh, Eliza in the house. Eliza, we love you. Always funny comments. Yeah, Dustin said Mudhole's a good place to get the micro stuff. I've heard of Mudhole custom stuff, but I don't know crap about building a rod. So, okay, let's see. Let's take one more question and then we're getting out of here. One more rod question for TFO, or really any question. We talked about knots, FG knots. Any vet would be proud to show their card. Yep, I know that's one way to do it. That's like a GovX thing, right? Don't they do like a picture of the card? But I think that's hard to do on a website unless you're completely like
It
set
is,
up
Michael.
for it.
I
Like with the
respect it.
ID
I
and all that.
genuinely do. I
Yeah.
totally respect it. I don't want to be. Yeah, please don't think that it's something we don't want to do. It's just something that it's. So, yeah.
Joshua, no giveaway tonight. I wish I could have, but I'm already behind and I want to get to those folks, just like Mantuba that I was talking to before. He won a couple weeks ago and I'm like a month behind on giveaways. So, and that's just live giveaways on my other stuff too. I'm behind. So let's see. One more question. We have one more good rod question before I get out of here. Great stream tonight, said Gabe. Gabe, thanks, brother. Always appreciate you. We got the Salt Strong FG knot. John said he visited the TFO website. Yeah, I linked them below their website in case you want to look at fly rods. I'd hang myself if I try to fly rod again. So I'm not the guy to ask for that. Salt stuff, but the bass stuff I also linked Tackle Warehouse. Here we go. Okay, we're ending here. Yeah, somebody did ask a couple questions on. I got 2 questions on this, and I think I know the answer. So why is a wind grip more expensive when I've heard cork is more sensitive? So that was a question earlier, and I think I know the question or the answer, because wind grips are way more expensive. Wind grips are just expensive to put on rods. And also, what's the lifespan of wind grips? I don't know if you all get any feedback on that. I guess it probably depends on how much you use them.
Yeah. Okay. So the true long-term lifespan of wind grips, we have seen no indication that they're not going to last as long as cork. The only wild card I have with that is we've had comments that the guys that wear gloves can wear out their wind grips. And it's
I've seen that. People have sent me pictures of that. Glove. Yeah.
But that being said, I have seen none of that, and I wear gloves. The wind grips, the thing that I like about them a lot is, and I was not, when I joined TFO, I went, wind grips, I don't know, I like cork. And then I got in the boat with them, and they are tacky even in the rain. They're tacky when your hands are sweaty. I would tell anybody, Cliff Pace did a great little video for us a couple of years ago. It was probably kind of a challenge to find because I think it was on his social media page, but he openly said, I was against it. I told him not to do it. And now every rod I have in the boat, I prefer to have a wind grip on it because they like it better. That being said, the cork still has that traditional cork feel. As far as sensitivity goes, that goes back to the balance conversation. It goes back to all of it.
Sure.
I have not seen any indication that the wind grips are better or worse for sensitivity on the tactical versus the tactical elite. The tactical elite has wind grips, the tactical has cork. I have seen zero sensitivity differences between them. That's
I think
unscientific. There's no scientific way to judge
Yeah.
that, but yeah, I would tell anybody, regardless of brand, give wind grips a try.
I was gonna say, like, in my past life before fishing, well, after fishing and then before fishing this most recent time, I played a lot of golf. And I would spend, per club in my bag, which is 13 clubs, I'd spend $10 a grip to put wind grips, the same brand, the WINN grips, on each and every one of my golf clubs because they just felt better. You got a better grip on them. If the conditions were hot and muggy and steamy, you wouldn't have to worry about that little bit of slip in your swing. And like, if at any point in time I will get, the little, I don't have any around me, but the little grips for your reel handles, and I'll put those on there. Not only do they like widen and extend the handle or, beefing the handle up a little bit, make it easier to fall or find it. It just is a better purchase overall. You're just going to be able to not even look, just grab it and go. And I am hands down wind grip fan 100%.
I agree with Eliza. Like to me, it depends on the whole feel in the hand. I love cork on some of them. I don't even care about EVA. Like I like EVA on some of them as long as it fits well. Like I said, I'm a line fingerer, so as long as I've got it there for anything that like has to be sensitive, it just has to be comfortable on my hand. I don't care
There's
what
a
the
lot
material
of
is.
EVA has come so far. EVA has come tremendously far. Much different than it was even 10 years ago. If you tried EVA and hate it, and try it again because it's come so far. The only thing that I've run into is some handles that I felt like got, I don't know, oddly slick when you dealt with pike slime and stuff like that. But that's nothing that TFO necessarily does.
It's slippery
but
on anything. Like
I've seen it.
Pike's not on you. It doesn't matter what your handle is.
The worst.
All right. Well, listen, everyone, we're going to get out of here. We did have to get the complimentary Guggen question. We have to get one every week. So Mike said, just in case you want to check it out, Guggens do the best knot from Walmart video challenge. So go check those out. Randy can attest to that. He's watched that video probably 800 times. I did also cross
87 times. Come on now.
Yeah, I did cross a place where there were a couple Guggen packages, and I knew that Randy had been there before he already took me to this spot because there were signs of Randall all over it. So listen, we're going to get out of here. Ross, where can they find you? I linked you below, but I'm assuming the TFO website, I linked that, and
it's TFOrods.com. Go check us out. I'm just boring Ross Evans on Facebook. I don't know why you want to follow me, but but
I'm boring DEBO'S fishing, some dummy in Iowa, and a lot of people follow me. So
yeah,
don't cut yourself short.
All right, I can attest to that. He is a dummy in Iowa. So,
and that's Dummy Dizzle. We call him Double D for a reason. He's also from Iowa. So we love each other. We got to have a good time. Thank you, Ross, for coming on for TFO.
Thank you, guys.
With us tonight. Yeah, super fun time. Thanks for taking time to answer questions.
You bet.
We'll be back again next week. I don't think. Oh, actually, somebody asked about the Monster Bass rods. I didn't know Monster Bass was making rods, but I might be able to get Monster Bass on next week to talk. So we're getting out of here. We're going to have a good time next week. So thank you all for watching. And until next live